How's it going today, guys? In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the last part of my second trip to Puerto Rico. And I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last episode where I got on to the ferry terminal to come back to the island. So I arrived back in Puerto Rico at about 5 o'clock in the evening. And I was pretty wore out from the 4 days that I spent in Vieques, but I knew I had to push on. So I ended up marching from Ceiba down to this little area called Punta Santiago that's down in the southern part of Puerto Rico. And I was wore out and I walked in the rain for about 4.5 or 5 hours to get there, and I couldn't find anywhere to sleep, so I decided to get an Airbnb down there. And the only unfortunate thing was I just got off the ferry terminal and had to start walking right away, and by the time I got to my Airbnb, there wasn't a store in sight that was open, so I knew I wasn't going to have anything to eat. But when I made it to the Airbnb, I was looking around in the kitchen and there was actually some food there. I don't know if the people that manage the Airbnb put food in there or if maybe the last tenant left some food there, but either way, I really appreciated that whole unopened box of pancake mix. And I had some peanut butter in my backpack, so I was able to make some peanut butter pancakes at least to stave off my hunger. And it was probably the best set of peanut butter pancakes that I've ever eaten in my life because I was just so hungry. And I couldn't believe it. What a score. There was a full box of pancake mix at this Airbnb. And it really held me over till the next morning. My Airbnb just so happened to be right down the street from the Municipal Cemetery there in Punta Santiago. So I got up extra early just as the sun was rising to film and photograph the cemetery there. And that's actually the cemetery that you guys are looking at right now in this video, the Cementerio Municipal de Punta Santiago. And it was an amazing little cemetery, and it was another one of those cemeteries that I was lucky enough to go in there and film it right as the sun was coming up, and that just creates for a different kind of video. And so I'm always excited if I can get into a cemetery when the sun's coming up or the sun's going down. But I knew I had a long day ahead of me after filming this little cemetery. I had to go back to the Airbnb for about an hour. I whipped up a couple more pancakes and scarfed them down, and then I made a couple more pancakes for the road and headed out because I had to make it to the next town before it got dark and find a bench to sleep on. So I marched on to the next city that went by the name of Humacao, and it was a crazy busy city, a lot like Santurce or Bayamon or San Juan. It was a city like that that was just completely packed, and I mean, it was crazy walking there. And it really wore me out, but I found a bench in this cool park to sleep on, and I got a decent amount of sleep. There was a high number of homeless people and just people walking around too, especially by the time it got to be about 3 in the morning. So I only got a couple hours of sleep, but I was glad I made it through without any incident. And, like I said, I tried to stick to my plan of getting an Airbnb or something like that or a hostel just every other day so I could save as much money as possible and, make this trip last as long as I possibly could. So I made it throughout the night without any incident, and The next morning, I marched straight to the mayor's office to get permission to film and photograph both of the cemeteries there in the city. They had two particularly large cemeteries I was looking at. One of them was the big, normal municipal cemetery, but the other cemetery was this special old historical cemetery. So, right when I heard the name, the historical cemetery, I knew that that was the first place I wanted to go and film and photograph. So, after I got permission from the mayor's office, I went and found an Airbnb and put my bag there, and I just took the essentials to the historical cemetery. And the guy that worked there and is running it, he was a really cool guy, and I ended up having about a 20-minute conversation with him, and he told me that I'm like family at the cemetery, so I could stay there as long as I want and take pictures and photographs. So I took him up on that offer, and I spent probably almost 5 hours walking around that cemetery and looking at the headstones and taking pictures and just doing everything that I normally do. And by the time I got dinner and made it back to my Airbnb, I was pretty exhausted, especially seeing that I didn't get much sleep the night before. So I took a shower in my Airbnb and then crashed out pretty hard, but I had to get up early the next morning to go and photograph and film the big municipal cemetery. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to sleep for as long as I wanted to. Also, that night while I was sitting in that Airbnb, I ran my finances and realized that I wasn't quite going to be able to make it as far as I wanted to in this trip. Originally, I was hoping to walk all the way back to Ponce and film and photograph all the cemeteries along the southeast coast, but by the time I made it to Humacao and was sitting there in my Airbnb, I realized I wasn't going to be able to afford that, and it was actually time to think about heading back to San Juan and flying home. That's how low my funds really were. So I got up and I filmed and photographed the big municipal cemetery, and that took me all day because, like I said, it was a huge cemetery. And my Airbnb, when I was in Humacao, it was on the complete other side of the city from the municipal cemetery. So that made it take extra long. I had to get up early and march across the crazy, hectic city. And then, like I said, I probably spent about 5 or 6 hours filming and photographing the municipal cemetery there. And when I made the decision that I knew I needed to go back to San Juan immediately, I decided to contact a taxi cab service and get a ride from Humacao straight to San Juan. So I had that planned for the following day. So I knew I just needed to sleep outside one more night in Humacao, and then I'd be off to the races in San Juan. So that's what I did. And I went to the one of the big parks right in the middle of the city, the plaza, as they call it in Puerto Rico. I went to the plaza and I got a couple hours of sleep. I was so tired, I probably fell asleep at about midnight. But then at about 3 o'clock, there was just a lot of noise and a lot of traffic and a lot of homeless people walking around. And I'm not trying to sound like Puerto Rico is this big, dangerous place, because when you're sleeping outside in the city, it could be dangerous anywhere in the world. Actually, Puerto Rico's a lot safer than most places, I would say, but I still just got a bad feeling in my stomach, and I knew that something just wasn't right, and I needed to get out of there. And so I got up and put my bag on and put my hat on. And about 3 in the morning, I decided to just start walking around. And I ended up going across town and decided just to go to the police station and lay down on the steps out there if they would allow me, because I just needed to make it through the rest of the night. It wasn't like I was, going to be there for very much longer. And I remember walking to the police station in the middle of the night, and I had to walk by this huge housing complex out there. And there were groups of people standing out in the road, hanging out and stuff, even like really late at night. So I was pretty sketched out walking through it, but luckily nobody really noticed me or anything. I ended up making it to the police station. And I just walked in and I talked to the cops and told them that I was heading back to San Juan tomorrow and asked them if I could just sleep outside on the steps. And they told me, yeah, that's okay. And as I was out there on the steps, one of the cops actually came out and said, hey, you can just come lay down and chill in the police station if you want to. You don't need to be laying out here on the steps. So that's what I did. And I didn't get any sleep. I pretty much pulled another all nighter. There was a vending machine in the police station, so I got a Gatorade and some cookies, and I just kind of laid there and chilled and hung out till about 5:30 in the morning, right before the sun started coming out. I got up and put my bag on and put my hat on and started my walk back across town because I was going to catch this taxi cab at a McDonald's, like right in the middle of the city. So that's what I did. And then I got a ride to San Juan at the airport, and I knew I still had a few more days to kill. So what I was hoping to do was film and photograph the cemeteries in Carolina. So I ended up walking from the airport deep into Carolina. I probably took about a good 4 or 5 hour walk, and I slept outside on a bench there in the park, and I was hoping to go talk to the mayor in the mayor's office the next morning and film and photograph the cemeteries in Carolina before I caught my plane home. But things didn't turn out as I hoped they would. I made it to Carolina. I slept on the bench, and that next morning, a huge rainstorm hit. Just one of those big Puerto Rico rainstorms. And it was raining so bad that I had to get an Airbnb out there in Carolina for the night. And this is one of the reasons why I'm glad I decided to try to get back to San Juan when I was in Humacao, because things like this can happen at any time where you run into situations with the weather or anything like that, and you end up having to get an Airbnb that you didn't necessarily plan on getting. So I'm glad I sacrificed that night at the police station in order to have the funds to get the Airbnb in Carolina when it was really raining. So I made it to my Airbnb. I got something to eat. I just kind of relaxed and looked at the weather report, and unfortunately, it looked like it was going to rain pretty hard the next day, too. So it started raining really hard that next morning, and I had to march for about 4 or 5 hours to get back into San Juan. And I made it to San Juan, and I remember getting a cheeseburger and fries at Chili's down there in the tourist area of San Juan in Carolina. And it was really good after that big long walk. And I was pretty disappointed that I failed at photographing and filming the cemeteries in Carolina once again. So I wanted to get a little bit of retribution. So I walked along the shoreline up there in San Juan, Carolina area, and waited until the sun was just about to go down. And I went to the Puerto Rico Memorial Cemetery and took a bunch of pictures and filmed a sunset cemetery episode. And that is the rarest of all of them for me to be able to do. So I felt pretty good about that. And then I went and had another burger because I was so hungry. And I just marched to the airport and decided just to lay down on the floor at the airport for the whole night and wait until the morning when I was supposed to board my plane to fly home. And so that's exactly what I did. And then I made it back home to Washington State, and It was a great trip and a great experience, and I learned a lot, and I can't wait to go back to Puerto Rico for another trip. I plan on going to Puerto Rico in January of next year. And instead of spending a month in Ponce or a month in San Juan, I want to spend a month in Caguas. And there's about 13 cemeteries there in that area that I'd like to film and photograph that I've never been to before. And then I'd like to finish the southeast coast and get all the cemeteries along the coastline there up until Ponce. And from there, I'd like to walk the east and north coasts again and film and photograph the cemeteries with my better camera. The first year I went to Puerto Rico and I filmed and photographed all those cemeteries. It was great, but my camera wasn't very high quality. So if I want to make books out of those cemeteries, I need to go back to them and film and photograph them again. So I have a lot of plans coming up for my third trip to Puerto Rico, but that's not going to be for a while. I hope you guys enjoyed my series of talking about my trips to Puerto Rico, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.